So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about Mars lines in astrocartography. Now, Mars lines tend to get a pretty bad rep by astrocartographers, and this has already started with the inventor of astrocartography, Jim Lewis, right? He didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Mars lines in astrocartography, and my goal with this video is to give you a more versatile view on Mars, to get a better understanding of how to give your Mars a positive outlet. But I'm also going to be talking about the challenges that Mars can bring with it, plus even dangers. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to give you an example of how to give your Mars a positive outlet by telling you my story when I first was on my Mars line, on one of my Mars lines. And when I was 14, I fell in love with traditional Chinese Shaolin Kung Fu, which is a martial arts form. And when I was 15, I really wanted to go to the Shaolin Monastery. Little did I know that the only Shaolin Monastery in China was exactly on one of my Mars lines. So what I did is I went to my parents, each individually, and I told them, listen dad, listen mom, I want to go to the Shaolin Monastery in China and train traditional Shaolin Kung Fu with the monks over there. And my dad's response, surprisingly, was, well, if your mom allows you to go there. And my mother's response was, well, if your dad allows that. They basically both individually, indirectly said yes. So I was like, okay, I'm going there. And last year I just asked my mother about this, and she said, well, you were so determined to go there that it was very hard to say no. Now, in order to get to the Shaolin Monastery from outside of China, you typically first arrive at the international airport of the capital, Beijing, right, of China. So the first thing that happened to me when I arrived there was to realize that my luggage was missing. My suitcase was nowhere to be found. So my first challenge was to actually find someone who spoke English properly on an international airport. And at some point, I started to raise my voice. I was getting pretty angry. And I said, I want to speak to someone who speaks English properly right now. So that's actually very atypical for me because I was 15. The typical response of a 15-year-old in a foreign country, far, far away from home, nobody that you know around you, your parents are very far away, nobody could help me. The typical response would, be afraid, would be even crying, and I did none of that. I was becoming more assertive and I got a confidence boost, right? So this is one of the advantages of Mars. It can also be a disadvantage because it can be too much of a confidence boost. But this is definitely one thing that can help people. Mars lines have the tendency to make you more assertive, right? And a lot of people could really benefit from becoming more assertive. So Mars lines can definitely help you with that. Now, at some point, I gladly found someone who spoke English properly and who could help me. So I managed to tell them exactly what was the problem, and they explained that they would ensure that my luggage would reach me in my destination in the Shaolin Monastery. Now, the next destination that I had to go to was Qinzhou. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but it's another city that is much closer to the Shaolin Monastery, but still from there it still required a hours-long drive by car. So I had to go to a next airport, but in order to do that, I had to go to a front desk in order to get something that they called an airport tax. So you had to pay the airport tax manually over there, and there was a very long line. So I didn't really want to go there at all. And at some point, two young, very professional looking guys approached me and they asked me in a pretty good English if I need airport tax, and I said yes. And they showed me the airport tax and it says 50, and they tried to sell me this for euros, which was actually in yuan. And back then that was like tenfold of the price that I would have typically paid if I went to the front desk. So I didn't realize it, but then at some point they asked me if I could give them also tips. And then I started to realize that they were actually scamming me. So what I did at some point was, I flashed the bigger note and I said, oh, I'm gonna give you this note, just give me your money back. And they gave it back and I took it and I said, now piss off, right? I might have even used a worse word than that. But since this is YouTube, I'm just gonna say it this way. And again, another point where I was becoming way more assertive and way more confident than it would be typical for a person my age and also typical from my own personality back then, right? And so I got the airport tax, I went to the next airport, I was picked up at the airport, we all managed that from the other, like from Germany, so we had someone who picked me up from the second airport and brought me to the destination, on to the Shaolin Monastery, and I gotten to know my master there, who had I had a mentor, a Shaolin monk who was my master, who was teaching me how to do traditional Chinese Kung Fu, much better than I learned it in Germany back then. And the training was, well, usually in Germany I did a few hours, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. There it was 9 hours training 6 times a week, right? So this was really strong training, and it started at 5 o'clock in the morning, eating nothing, really running 1 hour in the morning, then getting a break of 2 hours where we could eat breakfast. And after that, the training continued until the evening. And then at some point it was evening and we had 9 hours of training. Surprisingly, it really, like, the adjustment to this training went a lot faster than I thought. And this is not just because I was so special, it's just the human body really has the capability to adjust and to adapt into difficult situations much faster than we would typically expect it could, right? That was a very interesting thing that I realized. And I became, a lot more fit. I was there for 6 weeks. That was pretty much the whole summer holiday there. And I might have also had my first time there, my first girlfriend there. So that's also not atypical for Mars, because Mars is also sexuality and Mars is also experiences in that area. Another thing that was pretty interesting when I returned back to Germany, where I lived back then, was that some of the friends of my sister was 3 years older, I was 15, she was 18, and her friends were 18 too. They were starting to get a lot more interested in me, and at some point, many years later, one of them also admitted that when I came back, she was so attracted to me because I had this masculine energy. So also that is very typical for Mars, that when you, again, give this energy an outlet, right? I did the Martian things. I did physical workouts, right? Hard physical workouts, movement, right? Anything that has to do with fighting or martial arts. So I gave Mars a very strong outlet. However, even that can also go negative, because if you overgo, if you over challenge your body, you can also have injuries. So that's something, and I've seen people, also getting injured. So this is something to be very aware of, to be very wary of, to not over challenge your body and to not get overconfident just because you feel a lot stronger on your Mars lines typically, right? So this was my first experience on my Mars lines. I'm going to tell you a story in the next video how Mars can really turn a lot worse than the first experience that I had on the airport, which I mastered I would say quite well. But I'm gonna tell you, a way more dramatic story in the next video of how Mars can really turn into a very difficult situation for you, and how it can emotionally really make you a lot more angry than I was in the challenges that I had in the first time that I was on my Mars lines, right? So stay tuned for the next video. Thank you for watching this, and let me know what you think in the comments. Give me your feedback. Maybe you've been on your Mars lines. Tell me your experiences, right? Write your experiences, comment, give me a like or a dislike so I know if you liked the video, and that way I can also improve my videos for the next time, right? So thank you very much and have a beautiful day. Take care.